I stared at my phone, reading the text from my mother over and over. Emma, everyone's staying home due to the ice storm. Christmas dinner is canceled. Stay safe. At 35, I was used to disappointment, but something about this particular message made my stomach twist. Living in Nashville meant dealing with winter weather hazards, but what I didn't realize then was that this simple text would unravel years of family deception and change my life forever. I'm Emma Mitchell, a senior accountant at one of the city's largest firms. Until last Christmas, the first thought I was just the black sheep of the family, the quiet, career-focused sister who never quite fit in with their boisterous social gatherings. My younger sister Olivia was always the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. That Christmas morning, I settled in for what I thought would be a quiet day alone. I made myself hot chocolate, turned on some holiday movies, and tried to stay positive despite the creeping loneliness. Around 3 p.m., I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram when my heart stopped. There it was, a fresh post from my cousin Maya, perfect family Christmas at Olivia's. So blessed to have everyone together. Family traditions #Christmas dinner. The photo showed my entire family, mom, dad, aunts, uncles, cousins, even my grandmother gathered around Olivia's elegant dining table. They were all wearing festive sweaters, smiling and clearly enjoying the celebration they had deliberately excluded me from. Through the windows in their photos, I could see clear, sunny skies. There was no ice storm. There never had been. My hands shook as I scrolled through more photos. There was Dad carving the turkey, Mom arranging her signature Christmas cookies, my little nieces and nephews opening presents. The ice storm excuse was a complete fabrication, a convenient lie to avoid telling me. I wasn't welcome at their perfect family gathering. I felt physically ill as the truth sank in. All those times they'd told me events were canceled, all those intimate gatherings I hadn't been invited to, how many of them had actually happened without me? How long had they been coordinating behind my back to exclude me while pretending to care? The next morning, my phone rang. It was my mother, acting as if nothing had happened. "Hi, honey. Hope you had a nice, quiet Christmas. We missed you." The casual cruelty of her words made my hands clench into fists. This was the moment everything would change, though I didn't know it yet. Growing up in our red brick family home on Maple Street, I walked the path of the dutiful daughter. Each morning, I rose before sunrise to help Mom with chores, maintained straight A's through school, and even sacrificed my dream of studying photography at NYU to pursue accounting because my parents insisted it was more practical. The numbers became my refuge, their predictable patterns more reliable than family love. Olivia, though, she danced through life on her own terms. When she dropped out of college junior year to become a yoga instructor, our parents called her brave, a free spirit. Meanwhile, I worked overtime for 3 years to help them pay off their mortgage, and they treated it like an obligation fulfilled rather than a sacrifice made. One memory cuts deeper than the rest. 3 winters ago, when Dad needed triple bypass surgery, I took a month off work to care for him. Morning to night, I managed his medications, drove him to appointments, cooked his heart-healthy meals, and kept the household running. Olivia breezed in once, stayed long enough to take selfies with him for her wellness blog, then flew off to a yoga retreat in Sedona. Yet somehow, in my parents' retelling, Olivia became the daughter who provided emotional support while I just handled logistics. The pattern repeated with our extended family. At every gathering, my aunts would praise Olivia's spiritual journey while asking me when I was going to loosen up and live a little. My promotion to senior accountant warranted a brief nod, but Olivia's latest adventure, teaching sunset yoga in Bali, dominated 3 family dinners straight. Just last month, I spent an entire weekend helping Mom prepare for Thanksgiving, my hands raw from peeling potatoes and chopping vegetables. During dinner, she announced to everyone that Olivia had done all the cooking, while I helped with dishes. I swallowed my words with bitter cranberry sauce, playing my assigned role of the invisible daughter. When Olivia announced she'd host Christmas this year, I offered to help with planning and cooking. "Oh, don't worry about it," she said, waving her perfectly manicured hands. "I want everything to be perfect." The words should have stung, should have warned me, but I was still believing in the myth of family belonging, still trying to earn my way into their circle of warmth. Truth is, I've spent my entire life trying to earn what was freely given to my sister, making excuses for their behavior, pretending not to notice when they excluded me from spontaneous family gatherings that everyone else somehow knew about. I convinced myself that if I just tried harder, worked longer, gave more, they would finally see me as worthy of being in their perfect family picture. But as I sat there that Christmas morning, staring at my mother's artificial cheerfulness through the phone, something ancient and unspoken finally cracked open inside me. Like breaking trail through fresh snow, I was about to forge a new path, one that would reveal just how deep their deception ran. Gripping my phone like a shield, I challenged my mother's false cheer. Really? Because Maya's social media posts show everyone had a wonderful time at Olivia's house. Everyone except me. The silence stretched between us like a frozen river, deep and dangerous. I could almost see her face through the phone line, that familiar expression when she's caught in a lie but already weaving another. "Oh, well," she stammered, her voice thin as winter ice. "Olivia organized it last minute, and you know how you can be at gatherings. Always so quiet and making everyone uncomfortable. We just thought." "Thought what?" My voice cut through her excuses like a blade. That it would be better to lie to me, to make me spend Christmas alone while pretending everyone else was doing the same. "Don't be so dramatic," my mother sighed, switching from defense to attack with practiced ease. We were trying to avoid any awkwardness. You know how Olivia wanted everything to be perfect. Lightning struck my mind then, illuminating all the past canceled events, the mysterious schedule conflicts, the family photos I'd later discover on social media. This wasn't a single betrayal but a pattern, woven through the years like a dark thread through our family tapestry. How many times? The words barely escaped my throat. How many other gatherings have you lied to me about? Another telling silence spread its wings across the line. Then, "Emma, you're being oversensitive. This is exactly why." "Why what?" The dam inside me broke. "Why you exclude me. Why you pretend I don't exist unless you need something. Why Olivia gets to be the perfect daughter while I'm treated like an unwanted shadow. That's not fair," my mother protested, her voice sharp with indignation. "We love you both equally. It's just, Olivia puts in the effort to be part of the family. You're always so busy with work." Bitter laughter erupted from my chest. "Busy with work? You mean busy helping pay your mortgage? Busy taking care of Dad after his surgery? That kind of busy? Listen," my mother's voice turned to steel. "If you're going to be like this, maybe it's better if we give each other some space. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable." The line went dead, leaving me alone with 35 years of memories suddenly shifting into sharp, painful focus. Every excuse, every dismissal, every misunderstanding, it had all been intentional. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. That was the moment the last illusion shattered, when I finally saw the truth with eagle-eye clarity. I didn't have a family. I had people who shared my blood, but treated me like an afterthought, a convenience, a perpetual understudy in their perfect family play. Lightning flashed outside my window, and in its brief illumination, I saw my reflection in my laptop screen, back straight, jaw set, eyes clear. Something inside me had snapped, but not in the way they feared. It was the sound of chains breaking, of lies unraveling, of truth demanding its day in the light. My fingers found my keyboard with fierce purpose. It was time to end the performance, to tear down the carefully constructed facade they'd built. I began composing an email to my entire family, parents, sister, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who had gathered at that Christmas dinner. The words flowed like spring floodwaters, unstoppable and cleansing. My hands moved across the keyboard with the certainty of autumn wind through prairie grass. "I've seen the photos from Christmas dinner," I wrote. "The dinner I was told was canceled due to an imaginary ice storm." I attached screenshots of my mother's deceptive text messages alongside Maya's social media photos, truth and lies side by side like light and shadow. Before doubt could creep in, I pressed send, releasing my words into the digital wild. The responses swooped in like hungry ravens. Aunt Marie claimed they'd forgotten to tell me the plans had changed. Uncle Robert suggested I was overreacting to a simple miscommunication. Maya, whose posts had exposed their lie, quickly deleted all the Christmas photos and messaged me about causing unnecessary drama. Then came Olivia's response, a long flowing text of practiced spiritual wisdom about how I never make an effort at family events. and how excluding me was actually an act of kindness because I obviously don't enjoy their gatherings. She even suggested that my negative energy would have disrupted her perfect holiday atmosphere. But it was my parents' reaction that truly revealed the depths of their deception. Instead of apologizing, they went on the offensive like cornered wolves. My mother began calling mutual family friends, spinning tales about my emotional instability and persecution complex. My father sent a stern email about respecting family privacy and how airing our dirty laundry was unacceptable. "You've really done it now," Olivia texted. "Mom's crying. Everyone's upset. And it's all because you couldn't just accept that maybe you're the problem. This is exactly why we didn't want you at Christmas." I felt like a person watching two moons rise. The family I thought I had, and the family that actually existed. They had deliberately excluded and lied to me. Yet somehow, I was the villain for exposing their behavior. The more I stood my ground, the more they twisted the narrative like a rope, meant to bind me back into silence. When I refused to back down and apologize, they escalated their attack. My mother started appearing at my workplace unannounced, creating scenes in the lobby that left me trembling with embarrassment. Olivia posted daily social media updates about toxic people and choosing peace over family drama. My father threatened to cut me out of his will if I didn't get back in line. But instead of intimidating me, their actions only illuminated the truth like sunlight through stained glass. This wasn't a loving family protecting itself from a difficult member. This was a toxic system, desperately trying to maintain control over someone who had finally stopped playing by their rules. As the winter days grew shorter, I realized I needed to do more than just expose their lies. I needed to break free from their manipulation entirely. But fate had other plans, bringing me a revelation that would shake our family's foundation to its core. One morning, as frost painted delicate patterns on my office window, I received an unexpected message from Rachel Chen, our old family friend who had retired from managing my parents' finances years ago. "Emma, I've been seeing what's happening with your family on social media," she wrote. "There's something you need to know. Can we meet?" The local cafe where I met Rachel smelled of cinnamon and secrets. She sat in a corner booth, clutching a manila envelope like it contained sacred scrolls. Her eyes, usually bright with warmth, carried the weight of long-held guilt. "I've been carrying this burden for years," she said, sliding the envelope across the wooden table. "Your father swore me to secrecy, but after seeing how they're treating you now..." Her voice trailed off like smoke in winter air. Inside the envelope, I found bank statements and legal documents spanning 15 years. As my eyes traced the numbers, my accountant's mind quickly piecing together the story they told, my hands began to shake like aspen leaves in a storm. According to these records, my grandfather had left a significant inheritance specifically for my education and future, nearly $300, that I'd never known existed. "Your father was the trustee," Rachel explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was supposed to give you access when you turned 25. Instead, he transferred everything to Olivia's accounts, using it to fund her lifestyle and her failed business ventures." The revelation hit me like a prairie thunderstorm. All those years I'd worked overtime to pay for my accounting degree, the student loans I was still paying off, the times I'd helped them with their mortgage. They had been sitting on my inheritance the whole time, spending it on Olivia. "There's more," Rachel continued, pulling out another document. "Your grandfather also left properties that were meant to be split equally between you and Olivia. Your parents sold them all using your power of attorney. Remember when they said it was for emergency medical decisions when you were 18? My stomach twisted like a serpent. That document I'd trustingly signed, believing in their love and protection, had given them complete control over my financial interests. They had systematically robbed me while watching me struggle, accepting my help with their expenses, and making me feel guilty for not contributing enough to the family. The statements showed regular transfers to Olivia, labeled as business investments, money taken from my inheritance to fund her yoga studios, her retreats in Bali, all those adventures they'd praised her for, while criticizing my boring accounting career. "Why tell me now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "Because I saw your mother's social media posts painting you as unstable and ungrateful. They're trying to discredit you before you can discover the truth. They've been embezzling from you for years, Emma. What they've done isn't just morally wrong, it's illegal." Everything suddenly made horrible sense. Their escalating attempts to paint me as unreasonable, the threats to cut me out of the will when they'd already stolen my inheritance, their desperate need to maintain the narrative that Olivia was the successful sister while I was the difficult one. I carefully packed the documents back into the envelope, my mind clear as a winter morning. Thank you, Rachel. I know exactly what I need to do now. This wasn't just about a ruined Christmas anymore. This was about years of calculated deception and theft. And I, an accountant with years of experience tracking financial fraud, was uniquely qualified to make them face the consequences of their actions. In the days that followed, I worked like a woman possessed, building my case with the precision of a master weaver, creating a tapestry of truth. Every unauthorized transfer, every misused power of attorney, every fraudulent document, I tracked them all with the skill that had made me successful in my career. I also hired Sarah Martinez, a lawyer specializing in estate fraud, to review everything. This is a clear case of financial exploitation, Sarah confirmed, her eyes hard as she reviewed the evidence. We can file criminal charges if you want to pursue that route. Like a hawk circling its prey, I considered my options carefully. A criminal case would shatter my family's reputation into 1,000 pieces, but they had already broken something far more precious: trust. Still, I decided to offer them one final chance at redemption, like the last light of day before darkness falls. I emailed them requesting a family meeting to resolve our differences. They eagerly accepted, no doubt believing they could manipulate me back into their carefully constructed web of lies. We agreed to meet at my apartment the following Saturday, when the winter sun would be strongest. That morning, I arranged 3 folders on my dining table, one for each of them. Each folder contained complete records of their fraud, along with a letter from my lawyer outlining their choices: transfer all remaining funds back to me and sign a confession, or face criminal charges. They arrived like actors taking their final bow, my mother with her practiced smile, my father's confident stride, Olivia's spiritual serenity. My mother started immediately, "Emma, we're so glad you've come to your senses." I cut through her words by sliding the folders across the table like dealing cards in a final hand. "Before anyone says another word, I suggest you read these." The color drained from my father's face as he scanned the documents. Olivia's hands trembled like leaves in a storm. My mother, ever the director of our family drama, tried to maintain control. "This is ridiculous. You're trying to blackmail your own family." "Blackmail?" My laugh held no warmth. "No, I'm giving you a choice. Return my inheritance with interest and admit what you did, or I'll let the police handle it." Rachel's already agreed to testify. "Rachel had no right," my father began. "You had no right," I interrupted, my voice strong as mountain stone. "You stole from me for years while watching me struggle. You used my power of attorney to sell property that was rightfully mine. You funded Olivia's lifestyle with my inheritance." Olivia burst into tears, her yoga-trained serenity crumbling. "I didn't know. They told me the money was from their savings." "Don't lie," I replied calmly. "The transfers went directly to your accounts. You knew exactly what you were doing." My mother tried one last manipulation. "Think about what this will do to the family. What will people say?" "You should have thought about that before stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from your own daughter," I responded. "You have 48 hours to decide. Either sign the confession and arrange the transfers, or I'm going to the police." They left in panic, my father practically dragging my hysterical mother and sister away. Within hours, the family group chat exploded with messages, all taking their side. But I remained steady as a mountain stream, knowing I had truth and evidence as my allies. The deadline passed like a shadow at noon. Just as I expected, they chose pride over honesty. Instead of making things right, they tried destroying evidence, closing accounts, shredding documents, even attempting to pressure Rachel into retracting her statement. What they didn't know was that I had already submitted everything to the authorities. The morning after the deadline, I formally filed charges. By afternoon, the police were at their doors with search warrants. My father was escorted from his workplace in handcuffs. Olivia's yoga studio was seized as an asset, purchased with stolen funds. My mother's carefully curated social media facade crumbled as she was arrested during one of her charity committee meetings. 1 year later, I sat in my new home in Colorado, watching snow blanket the mountains outside my window. The court case had concluded months ago. My parents took plea deals agreeing to pay restitution, and Olivia's wellness empire had crumbled, forcing her to take a job as a receptionist. The perfect family image they worked so hard to maintain had dissolved like morning mist. Rachel visited last week, bringing an old photo album she'd found while cleaning out her office. Inside were pictures of my grandfather and me, moments I'd almost forgotten. In one photo, he was teaching me to fish, both of us laughing at some long-lost joke. "He always said you were the strong one," Rachel told me, touching the photograph gently. He knew they favored Olivia, but he believed you would overcome it. As I watched the snow fall, I understood that my grandfather's final gift wasn't just the inheritance. It was the strength to stand up for myself and the freedom to build a life on my own terms. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in getting even, but in getting free. Like the first green shoots breaking through winter snow, I had emerged stronger, wiser, and finally, truly myself. Story 2. Useless in terms of money. Really? My hands shaking with a mix of fury and astonishment, I gazed at the divorce papers on my desk. Daniel's remark was abruptly interrupted by the words, "The wife has consistently shown that she is financially incompetent and incapable of making a significant contribution to our marriage. My name is Judith, and I never imagined that my husband of 5 years would call me financially worthless at the age of 30. Not when I was in the last phases of selling my Palo Alto tech business. In particular, if it weren't so terrible, the irony would have been amusing. I caught a glimpse of my secretary, Amanda, laughing at something on her phone through the glass walls of my office. She'd been acting peculiar recently, taking longer lunches, making mystery phone calls, and being suspiciously engaged in our company's acquisition negotiations. Now that she was wearing new shoes and a fancy purse, the jigsaw pieces were beginning to fit together. The notice that flashed up on my laptop brought me back to reality. Our acquisition team sent out another email. The deal was practically finalized. $800,000 for my software business, which specializes on market analysis powered by AI. Not for secrecy, but because I had discovered early in my business that announcements are not as effective as success, I had kept the discussions confidential. Daniel, who had experience in real estate, had always written off my job as computer play. To be honest, he never made an effort to comprehend what I was building. Your tiny project. He made the call. Judith Amanda's voice cut through my thoughts as she peered into my office. Despite the fact that we were gaining clients and recognition in the tech sector, Daniel gave a call. "This weekend," he stated, "he will send someone to get his belongings." I said in a bland tone, "Thank you, Amanda." As she moved her new diamond bracelet away from the sunshine, I caught a little grin on her face. I received the same style from Daniel's mother on our first anniversary. I returned to my laptop and opened the safe folder that had all of the documents for our business. I would remove Amanda's access to our systems first thing tomorrow. It's standard procedure for an employee to give notice, which I knew would happen soon. I had to sign the final divorce papers. Citing irreconcilable disagreements and my alleged lack of financial skills, Daniel sought a swift and clean separation. He had no idea that I was finalizing the largest sale of my career when he was about to leave. A peculiar calmness washed over me as I grabbed for my pen. The greatest answer isn't always a response at all. It's just allowing them to be authentic. 3 days later, I was sitting across from my lawyers in their modern Palo Alto office, completing the acquisition and divorce documents. It was almost lyrical in its time. Signing away my broken marriage with one hand and protecting my company's future with the other. "Miss Kennedy, you are aware that Mr. Harrison will not be able to collect your company's assets if you don't challenge the divorce or reveal the impending sale," my corporation lawyer, Barbara, inquired. She shoved her spectacles up her nose. I nodded, thinking back to the evening 6 months prior when I had my initial suspicions. Amanda had been asking odd questions concerning our company's investor relationships and appraisal techniques, and Daniel had been working late more frequently. At the time, I had engaged a private investigator to safeguard my intellectual property rather than out of envy. My worries about possible business espionage nearly overshadowed the pictures they sent of Daniel and Amanda's intimate meals. I completely get it. I signed another form in response. Daniel thought I was, so he made his decision. I paused and smiled slightly as I quoted him. "Useless in terms of money. I don't see why his assumption should be corrected." Until the deal closed, the corporate acquisition team had maintained strict confidentiality. Although they would be pleasantly delighted by the retention bonuses I had negotiated for them, Not even our staff knew yet. However, the most of them would be. My VP of engineering texted me and my phone chimed. Amanda has tendered her resignation, which will take effect right now. Claims to be exploring a novel and interesting opportunity. Just on time, I said, drawing Barbara's interest. Do we need to worry? She inquired. I gave a head shake. No. Simply the anticipated departure of an individual who believes they have discovered a more favorable situation. I neglected to add that I had previously moved all of her access to a monitored account, which would keep track of any efforts to access private data on the internet. You get better at anticipating exits before they occur. I heard 2 developers talking about Amanda boasting about her fantastic investment possibility later that day. Something about unique real estate transactions that will quadruple investors' money within months. The glimmer of greed that had likely drawn Daniel was something I recognized. In that sense, they were ideal for one another, as they were both so desperate to become wealthy fast that they failed to recognize the importance of creating anything lasting. I went back to my computer and opened the checklist for the last acquisition, allow them to pursue their aspirations for quick cash. I had a future to develop and a business to sell. On a Thursday afternoon, the purchase agreement was finalized. In addition to the sale, I got a great feeling of success for creating something tangible and worthwhile. As I stood in our office kitchen, watching my colleagues celebrate with champagne and seeing their smiles light up when I gave them their retention incentives. Our main developer, Michael, raised his glass and was called out by Judith, the most amazing employer who never once revealed that she was a clever millionaire in secret. The room burst into cheers and laughing. Considering how different this was from Daniel's dream of rapid wealth, I grinned. He had never realized that real success typically required years of meticulous labor. Instead, he had always boasted about hitting it big with some cunning plan or insider tip. Barbara had left me a message, and my phone buzzed. The divorce was completed. Harrison made no objections to any of the stipulations. Well done. You have a lot more money and are officially single. Just as I opened my mouth to reply, Tyler from accounting rushed over. Excitement unrelated to champagne caused his face to flush. He muttered, "You won't believe what I just heard, Judith. Daniel recently took out a sizable loan on his real estate assets, according to my buddy at First Base Bank. He's liquidating everything to invest in some exclusive opportunity." Tyler used his fingers to create air quotes. Amanda apparently persuaded him that she was privy to our company's exclusive trading algorithms. Even as I took in this knowledge, I maintained a neutral look. Our real AI technology has never been available to Amanda. She had only seen the user interface that we presented to our clients. She wouldn't tell Daniel that, though, of course. That's intriguing. I took a drink of champagne and calmly responded. They are undoubtedly skilled at what they do. I discovered an old picture of Daniel and me at a work Christmas party later that night when I was packing up my office. I was talking to our developers about a new project, and he was staring at his phone as usual. Now it seemed appropriate. He had never truly existed in my life, constantly searching for something quicker or better. I picked up my laptop and threw the picture in the recycling bin. The integration procedure with our purchasing firm would start tomorrow. I was under a 3-year contract to keep up my team's leadership and advance our technology with the help of a large tech company. I noticed a text from my former private investigator as I was making my way to my car. I assumed you would be curious. Recently, I purchased a one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands, traveling alone. I didn't answer. Rather, I switched off my phone and headed home to my new hillside condo, where I sipped wine on the balcony while taking in the sunset over Silicon Valley. Getting even isn't always the goal of success. It's about moving on and letting other people deal with the fallout from their own decisions. I was in meetings discussing the expansion of our AI platform 2 months after the acquisition. I was studying integration plans with our new parent firm when the first indications of Daniel and Amanda's demise appeared. When my old accounting assistant Lisa called and said, "Have you seen the news?" Without introducing herself, she requested, "Daniel just made an announcement at his real estate firm. They're going to close." Anger-filled investors are gathered outside their building. On my laptop, I opened the local business news. Indeed, Daniel's office was there, along with a number of individuals demanding their money back and waving placards denouncing fraud. Several of the faces of other real estate brokers who had collaborated with him over the years were familiar to me. It appears that each of them made an investment in a special investment fund. Lisa went on to discuss guaranteed profits and proprietary trading algorithms. Does that sound familiar? I inhaled deeply and turned off my phone. Naturally, Amanda had given her plan more legitimacy by using her job as my secretary. She had most likely persuaded them that she had intimate knowledge of cutting-edge trading tools because she worked for a computer firm. I eventually said, "Thanks for letting me know." In reality, though, I'm going into a meeting on our entry into Asian markets. I ended the call and returned my focus to my real task. We were already surpassing our first quarter expectations, and our AI technology was proving to be much more beneficial than expected. It was my duty to my staff and our investors to keep my attention on the prospects at hand, rather than the turmoil from my past. However, it was hard to completely overlook the issue between Daniel and Amanda. In the days that followed, further information surfaced. They had persuaded a number of Daniel's affluent clients to invest in their special fund, in addition to his coworkers. It had been impossible to resist the allure of proprietary trading algorithms, which were purportedly based on insider information from their affiliation with my business. My thoughts were interrupted by a voice, Miss S. Harrison. A detective was standing in the doorway of my office when I looked up. "Now it's Miss Kennedy," I corrected him. "How may I assist you?" "We are looking into a possible investment scam involving Daniel Harrison and an Amanda Martinez." "We understand." Miss Martinez was employed here. I retrieved Amanda's employment file from my computer and nodded. For 2 years, she served as my secretary. She could only perform simple administrative tasks. She didn't use our proprietary technology at all. As I described Amanda's function and responsibilities, the investigator took notes. "When did she step down?" "About 2 months ago, shortly before my divorce was finalized." I gave him a copy of her letter of resignation. HR was used to document everything. "Are you aware that she and Mr. Harrison vanished with about $3.2 million that was invested by investors?" I maintained a neutral expression. "No, but I don't find it surprising." Despite never having access to any sensitive information, Amanda showed a great deal of interest in the purchase negotiations for our firm. She probably made advantage of that alleged link to give whatever plot they were executing more legitimacy. The detective gave me a questioning glance. "You seem extremely relaxed about this." I indicated to the lively workplace outside my glass walls, where my staff was working on practical ideas. "I recently sold my genuine technology business for $800,000, and it is currently growing internationally. I don't have time to worry about those who have decided to fall for scams that promise easy riches." Over the course of the next weeks, I had a series of epiphanies while having my daily coffee at my favorite cafe in Palo Alto. I overheard 2 of Daniel's old coworkers lamenting their losses. Everything was taken by him. My funds for retirement, my children's college money. One man murmured, his voice cracking. "Amanda showed us all of these phony trade data and said that we were generating monthly profits of 40%. "How could our foolishness have occurred?" his friend answered. "We assumed that I discreetly paid for my coffee and walked out since she was employed by a software business. I had more pressing issues to attend to back at the workplace. I was conducting interviews with possible leads for our new Singapore office, and our AI platform was growing more quickly than anticipated. True innovation is the foundation of true success." Barbara called with an update that afternoon. She added the FBI is now engaged. Amanda and Daniel apparently created shell corporations in 7 states. The estimated total damages are around $5 million. "Do you see them?" I was more curious than worried when I inquired. 2 days following their arrival, the Cayman Islands account was completely depleted. Surveillance lost sight of them when they were last seen getting on a yacht. Barbara hesitated. "If you are agreeable, the investigators would want to speak about Amanda's position at your business." I thought about this. Forward our HR to them. Records in my earlier declaration. Amanda didn't have access to our technology because she worked as a secretary. Anything else she said was false. It's simple. They discovered some intriguing emails as well. Barbara said that it seems Daniel boasted to investors about abandoning his financially worthless wife right before this investment plan took off. Ironically, the time is perfect. Recalling what he had said in the divorce papers, I grinned a little. "Barbara, karma frequently has better timing than we do. I have to get ready for my board presentation now. We're considering diversifying into uses of AI in medicine." Later that day, I observed my staff in action as I strolled around our office. We were hiring additional developers as a result of the purchase, and our technology was developing in ways I could never have imagined. I watched our AI evaluating the results of cancer treatments on one screen. On another, it was forecasting patterns of climate change. A news alert rang on my phone. A former IT worker and local real estate tycoon are wanted in a multi-million-dollar investment scheme. The post promised amazing profits based on exclusive AI trading algorithms and featured pictures of Daniel and Amanda looking put together and professional. My main developer, Michael, had a quick look at my phone. It's amazing that they believed they could impersonate our technology. We've been working on these algorithms for years, he claimed. Individuals hold the beliefs they choose to have, I answered, putting my phone down, particularly when they're trying to make quick cash. On the subject of money, Michael smiled. The initial testing of the medical AI prototype was just completed. Already, the venture capital firms are phoning. I grinned, shifting my focus from the past to the future. We had been developing technology that had the potential to transform lives, while Daniel and Amanda had been peddling falsehoods. I said, let's concentrate on that. There is a lot of work ahead of us. I was showcasing our medical AI innovations at a large tech conference in San Francisco 6 months after we integrated our purchase. The Wall Street Journal had written a comprehensive expose on Daniel and Amanda's deception, including aspects I was unaware of when the story ultimately came to light. In the interval between sessions, I used my tablet to browse the article. Evidently, they had already begun to organize their strategy as soon as our acquisition negotiations commenced. As my secretary, Amanda had utilized her job to produce documents that combined parts of our real AI technology with entirely false trade outcomes. As I was leaving the stage, Miss Kennedy, a Tech Weekly reporter, came up to me. Any thoughts on the investment controversy involving Harrison Martinez? Considering your connection? I only have a connection because I manage the real technological firm that they attempted to copy. I cut in aggressively, but courteously. Hospitals and climate scientists are both benefiting from our AI technology's ability to forecast patient outcomes. I am here to talk about it. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit sent me an email back in my hotel room. After I had removed Amanda's login credentials, they discovered proof that Daniel had attempted to get access to my company's systems several times in an effort to hide their traces by stealing real trading algorithms. The agent wrote, "Your security measures prevented any breach. However, we need the assistance of your team to follow their digital presence across several Bitcoin exchanges." I sent our security staff the request. Naturally, we would assist law enforcement, but I had more urgent medical issues to attend to. A number of significant healthcare providers were keen to collaborate with us, and I had recently been granted fast-track permission for hospital studies. Barbara sent me a text, and my phone lighted up. "I believed you ought to be aware. Daniel was located. He was apprehended by Buenos Aires airport security as he attempted to use a forged passport. Amanda and the money are nowhere to be seen." My VP of operations came on my door as I was just finishing off my response. "I apologize for interrupting, but the climate modeling algorithm recently saw a breakthrough by the Singapore team. When you're ready, they're prepared to demo. Make the call." As I put my phone away, I said, "The past could wait. The future was unable to." The rest of the story was revealed in the headlines the following morning. Daniel was left to deal with the fallout on his own after Amanda reportedly vanished with almost all of the money. He was now facing extradition and several federal charges after his last-ditch attempt to escape had failed. I discussed the significance of ethical innovation and true value creation in my closing keynote address at the conference. Without bringing up Amanda or Daniel, I talked about the larger lesson. Real innovation isn't about making big promises or making quick money. It's about solving real problems and creating real value, I told the crowded auditorium. Fast money isn't a good indicator of success. It is quantified by the number of lives saved and issues resolved. Nobody failed to notice the irony. When we received the Innovation of the Year award for our medical AI platform, Daniel was extradited to face charges on the same day that he pursued phony algorithms and empty promises. We had created something groundbreaking. I got another update from the FBI that night. The majority of the investors' money was lost, but they had frozen a number of offshore accounts. Amanda, who most likely had millions of dollars in stolen money, was still at large. After shutting down my laptop, I focused on our most recent project proposals. Our story was being written, while theirs was coming to an end. I watched Daniel's sentencing in the courtroom a year later. His defeat had replaced his former confidence, and he appeared older than his 35 years. The judge's evaluation of his offenses was uncompromising. "Mr. Harrison, you have pled guilty to multiple counts of wire fraud, investment fraud, and conspiracy," she declared. "Your willing participation in this scheme has destroyed lives and retirement savings. The court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison. I didn't stay to watch him being led away. I had a board meeting to attend where we'd be discussing the rollout of our medical AI system to 50 more hospitals. Our technology had already helped improve patient outcomes by 40%, and the climate modeling division was making remarkable progress in predicting extreme weather patterns. The media had dubbed our story the Tale of Two Paths, contrasting my legitimate success with Daniel and Amanda's fraud, while they had sold lies and stolen dreams. We had built something that was actually changing the world. Amanda was still missing, presumably living somewhere with the stolen millions. Interpol had traces of her in Dubai, then Singapore, but the trail had gone cold. Daniel's desperation to find her had only underscored the completeness of her betrayal. As I drove to our Palo Alto headquarters, I thought about how differently things might have turned out if Daniel had actually bothered to understand what I was building, instead of dismissing it as financially useless. But then again, people who chase quick riches rarely recognize real value when they see it. 2 weeks after Daniel's sentencing, I was asked to give the commencement speech at Stanford School of Engineering. Looking out at the sea of eager faces, I saw the same drive and determination that had pushed me to build something meaningful. "Success isn't about finding shortcuts," I told them. "It's about creating real value. The world is full of people looking for quick wins and easy money. But true innovation comes from dedication, integrity, and the courage to build something genuine." After the ceremony, a young woman approached me clutching her diploma. "I read about what happened with your ex-husband and former secretary," I said. She said, "It must feel satisfying to see them get what they deserved." I thought about this for a moment. Actually, I was too busy building something real to focus on their downfall. They chose their path just as I chose mine. That evening, I received an email from our Singapore team, our climate modeling. I had just helped a small island nation successfully evacuate before a devastating typhoon. Thousands of lives had been saved. Meanwhile, another alert popped up. Federal authorities had just seized the last of Daniel's hidden assets, a mere $42,000 in a forgotten account. As I walked through our office, now spanning 3 floors and employing over 200 people, I felt a deep sense of contentment. The company that Daniel had dismissed as my little project was now valued at over $100 million sand. More importantly, was making a real difference in the world. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's the simple satisfaction of building something meaningful while others chase shadows. Story 3. My husband made me a cup of coffee, but it smelled really weird. "Made you a special coffee, honey." "Oh," he said. I answered, "How lovely," and silently switched the cups with my sister-in-law, who always tormented me. 30 minutes later, "Don't you want to try the coffee I made especially for you, honey?" James, my husband, asked with a strange smile that stopped short of his eyes. I was sitting at my sister-in-law Nina's elegant dining table in her Nashville home, where we gathered for our monthly family brunch. My stomach turned at the odd, almost metallic smell coming from the coffee cup in front of me. I'm Christina, and I never thought that at the age of 29 I would be wondering if my own husband was attempting to poison me. However, I had learned to exercise caution, particularly around Nina, after 3 years of marriage and numerous unintentional food poisoning episodes. She had a way of orchestrating situations that left me sick or humiliated, always with that same innocent smile James was wearing now. "How considerate of you." My mind racing, I forced a smile as I answered. The scent flowing from the cup was unlike any coffee I'd smelled before. It reminded me of the occasion last month when I'd ended up in urgent care after drinking tea at Nina's place. The physicians couldn't explain my problems, and Nina had sworn she'd made the tea precisely the same way she made her own. Nina watched me intently from across the table, absently stirring her own untouched coffee. "James has been quite the barista recently," she said with a smirk. "For you, he has been experimenting with various brewing techniques." The way she emphasized "for you" sent chills down my spine. James has been spending more time at Nina's place recently, and I'd seen that they were allegedly preparing a surprise for our next anniversary. However, the whispered conversations seemed strange, and they ceased when I walked in. The strange text I glimpsed on his phone, and now this coffee with its unusual fragrance. I lifted the cup, pretending to take a sip while studying their expressions. James and Nina exchanged a short glance that reinforced my assumptions. Making a show of checking my phone, I stood up abruptly. Would you take a look at that? For work, I have to make a brief call. Nina, would you mind if I use your study? As I walked past Nina's place setting, I deliberately stumbled quickly, switching our coffee cups in the confusion of studying myself. I'm so sorry, I said, standing up straight. I'm such a klutz. Occasionally. Nina shrugged aside my apologies with a forced smile. Just try not to break anything in the study. I nodded and ran away, my heart hammering through the study doorway. I could still see them at the table. All I could do now was wait and observe from the doorway of the study. My stomach knotted with nervousness as I watched Nina raise the coffee cup to her lips. I needed to know the truth, but I also wanted to warn her and stop her. I'd spent too many nights in emergency rooms, too many hours hunched over in pain, after eating with them, of course. This was not always the case. When I first met James at a friend's wedding in Nashville 3 years ago, he was affable and considerate. Nina had seemed welcoming too, inviting me to family gatherings and offering to help plan our wedding. But looking back, I should have noticed the red flags, the way she would accidentally spill things on my dress at important events, or how my food always seemed to have extra seasoning when she helped cook. It began as a minor incident. I have a rumbling stomach. There was a slight allergic reaction. James always had an excuse. Ready? Maybe it was something you ate earlier, or you must be coming down with something. However, the pattern was starting to emerge. The worst happened 2 months ago, when I had breakfast at their house and ended up in the hospital. The physicians detected traces of something in my system they couldn't identify. James, however, persuaded everyone that I must have taken some out-of-date medicine. I gripped the doorframe, watching as Nina took another sip of the coffee. James appeared indifferent as he typed on his phone. I left my own unopened copycat on the table, and it phoned. I shuddered as the metallic odor persisted in my nostrils. I saw that Nina's hand was trembling a little. She sat down, the cup, her face instantly pale. James, she replied, her voice cracking. There's a problem. James raised his head. His look changed from uncertainty to terror when he recognized which cup she was drinking from. He leaped to his feet, toppling his chair. Nina, what's happening? Nina's hands were trembling violently. I don't now. I believe she tripped and grabbed the table's edge for support as she attempted to stand. What did you put in that coffee, James? I strolled out of the study, my phone already filming. James was beside Nina now. He had a pale face. He muttered that wasn't meant to be your cup. However, his statements were audible in the dining room's quiet. Nina's eyes widened with comprehension and horror. Make an ambulance call. She gasped, dropping to the floor. Please, I can't. I phoned 911 immediately. My hands steady despite the chaos unfolding before me. Now Nina lay on the ground, her body shaking violently. James knelt alongside her, dread written over his face as he realized their plan had backfired miserably. Services for emergencies? Indeed. We need an ambulance at 1542 Maple Grove Drive, I said, obviously using my other hand to record on my phone. My sister-in-law looks to be having a strong response to something in her coffee. She's conscious, but experiencing tremors as I spoke to the dispatcher. Nina fixed her gaze on mine. Raw fear replaced the usual cold calculation in her eyes. She gasped, Christina, you switched. You were aware. The ambulance is en route, ma'am. I was reassured by the dispatcher. Keep on the line, please. James was feeling more anxious by the second. Nina, what's going on? That wasn't meant to happen. It was not intended for, after all. Shut up, James. Nina snapped between clamped teeth, her wrath briefly overpowering her pain. This is all your fault. You said that she would get so ill that she would be unable to attend the board meeting the following week. You assured me it wouldn't be found. My blood froze. The board meeting where I was set to make my proposal for a significant customer account. For months, Nina had been attempting to get the same account at our rival companies. Everything started coming into place the final month. My voice was surprisingly steady as I spoke. What about the incident at breakfast? It was 2 months ago. Didn't those happen by accident? Another wave of pain twisted Nina's face. The team meant to keep you at home while the Johnson deal was being presented. But you went nonetheless. She doubled over, clutching her stomach. James stated, "We only needed to discredit you," he continued. "Give clients the impression that you are untrustworthy." Outside, the air was filled with sirens. James stood up, backing away from both of us. "Nina, stop talking. You have no idea what you are saying. I am well aware of what I am saying." Nina slurred her words as she spit. "Since Christina began outperforming me at every client meeting, we have been organizing this for months. You were supposed to make sure she drank it today." The paramedics stormed through the front door, and I hurriedly moved aside to allow them work. As they carried Nina onto a stretcher, I stopped recording and transmitted the footage to my private email, next to my attorney. James remained paralyzed, watching as his meticulously prepared strategy disintegrated around him. "I'll accompany her to the hospital by car." In a stern voice, I informed the paramedics. "After all, I need to make sure my sister-in-law gets the right treatment." I caught James's scared look, and I'm sure the physicians will be very interested in understanding exactly what was in that coffee. As medical professionals raced to treat Nina, the Nashville General Hospital emergency room was bustling with activity. I sat in the waiting room, my phone clutched in my hand, replaying the recording of Nina's confession. The tremors in her voice, the panic in her eyes, that was all the proof I required. This wasn't simply paranoia on my behalf. "Nina Anderson's family," a nurse yelled. I rose up, observing James's apparent absence. He'd murmured something about parking the car 20 minutes ago and hadn't returned. "I'm her sister-in-law," I said, going through the double doors after the nurse. "How is she?" Although she stabilized, the amounts of poisons in her system were alarming. The nurse had a serious look on her face. "Regarding some odd results in her blood tests, the doctor wants to talk to you." A tall, sharp-eyed woman with graying hair, Dr. Phillips, was waiting outside Nina's room. "Could you explain me the specific events leading up to your sister-in-law's illness, Miss S. Bennett?" I pulled out my phone and inhaled deeply. "You should listen to this first, in my opinion." As I listened to the brunch recording, I saw the doctor's face shift from one of professional concern to one of alarm. "This is really serious," she added, scribbling notes on her tablet. "The material we discovered isn't something that ends up in coffee by mistake. We are examining intentional contamination." At that moment, James emerged from the other end of the corridor. His face was sweaty and pale. He had obviously heard what the doctor had said. "Christina." He started taking a step toward me. "Let me clarify. Stay back." Dr. Phillips pressed the call button for the nurse and issued a warning. "Please send security to room 412. James put up his hands in a gesture of submission. "All of this is miscommunication." Nina was perplexed. She was unsure of her own words. "Really? Last week, I found a text on his phone and opened it up. The ones I'd sent to myself in secret. Therefore, the texts you sent with Nina regarding ensuring she was out of commission prior to the Henderson presentation were merely cordial exchanges." His face drained of color. "You searched through my phone when I found the weird tablets in your desk drawer." "Yes, I did." I looked across at Dr. Phillips. "Doctor, I've had inexplicable symptoms that have sent me to the hospital 3 times in the last 6 months. If they correspond with what you discovered in Nina's system today, please let me know." The physician's eyes squinted. "To compare, we'll need to conduct some tests. Your husband will be kept accessible for interrogation by security." 2 security officers showed in and took up positions on either side of James. He seemed imprisoned, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. "Nina and I," he stuttered. "All we wanted to do was slow you down. You were accepting all the major customers while working too hard. Nina said if we could just make you take some time off by poisoning me." My hands trembled with anger, but I spoke steadily. "How long have you been doing this? Was it you who tampered with my food at the Christmas party too?" I only needed James's silence as an answer. I could see Nina's room behind him, where she was lying with several monitors attached to her. The terror of someone who realized their plans had finally caught up with them, had replaced her former swagger. "Detective Mendoza will arrive shortly," Dr. Phillips said softly. "She'll want to obtain statements from everyone involved." I nodded, experiencing an odd sense of serenity. There was no turning back now that the truth was finally being revealed. Within an hour, Detective Mendoza was there, commanding attention in the hospital's sterile hallway. She was an experienced investigator with a focus on instances involving domestic violence, and she listened intently as I played the recording from brunch and showed her the text messages. "Miss S. Bennett," she said, reviewing her notes. "You mentioned past hospitalizations. Could you elaborate on those incidents?" I took out my phone once again and opened a document that I had been secretly keeping up with for months. The first time was following supper at Nina's place in February. I had severe stomach pains and dizziness. The second was the tea incident in April. And then in June, after breakfast with them, my voice stayed steady as I proceeded. The symptoms were identical each time, but sufficiently varied to prevent the physicians from determining a reason. As she studied my thorough log of dates, symptoms, and circumstances, the detective's eyes narrowed. "And you've been keeping records ever since I noticed the pattern." After a moment of hesitation, I took out another phone from my purse. I began to keep a backup phone with a different number on me as well. I utilized it to capture discussions while I was around them. Though they take care to avoid becoming overt, I have many instances when Nina and James talk about their goals. In one of the recordings, the sound of Nina's voice was unmistakable. "The Henderson account is worth millions, James. We can't let her ruin everything we've worked for. Just stick to the plan. A few days of sickness ought to be plenty." James. His reaction was as terrible. "This time I have something more powerful. She won't make it to the presentation." Detective Mendoza's expression darkened as she listened through the window of Nina's room. My sister-in-law was now awake, as I could see. She appeared far less self-assured than she did at breakfast. The detective told me that toxicological testing are being conducted at the hospital. A number of compounds that are not found in nature have previously been identified by Dr. Phillips. "We will also want samples from your residence." We heard a disturbance down the hallway. James was disputing with the security personnel, his voice increasing in frustration. "I have to talk to my wife," he yelled. "Please, Christina, you're not understanding. We were trying to protect you." We were separated by Detective Mendoza. "You're not making your point, Mr. Bennett. We've already found proof of premeditated." "Was it planned?" James laughed, a hollow sound that resonated along the corridor. "We were just trying to slow her down. She was working herself to death, considering all of the important accounts. Nina asked if we might poison her to force her to take a break." The voice of Detective Mendoza was piercing. "That's not protection, Mr. Bennett. That's attempted murder." The color left James's face. "Murder? No, it's not. We didn't intend to." "Then what exactly did you mean to do?" My voice was unusually calm as I asked. "What was meant to happen when you added something to my coffee this morning?" Behind him, James's quiet spoke more than words could. Through the window of her hospital room, I could see Nina observing. Her expression was one of fear and cunning. I pondered whether she was attempting to twist this. How can I justify months of consistent poisoning as some kind of mistaken attempt to assist me? Detective Mendoza informed the security personnel that we would want both of their phones. "And I want cops positioned at both doors. Nobody leaves until we have the toxicological findings." Dr. Phillips entered Nina's chamber with a tablet in hand, her look bleak as she studied the test findings. James stayed outside with the guards, and I followed Detective Mendoza. In her hospital bed, Nina made an effort to sit up taller, but the tremors hadn't quite stopped. Several drugs had high amounts, according to the toxicological study. Her voice was clinical, according to Dr. Phillips. The presence of a specific chemical that is often utilized in pharmaceutical testing is the most worrying. The general public shouldn't be able to access it. Nina's face became white. "That's impossible." According to James, it was only meant to produce minor symptoms. Mild symptoms. Taking out a notebook similar to the ones your sister-in-law had been using for the previous 6 months, Detective Mendoza interrupted. Another investigator came in with an evidence bag as the door opened. "We found these in Mr. Bennett's office desk at the Anderson marketing firm." According to his report, he displayed a number of little bottles with clinical labeling and thorough notes about doses and reactions. As I became fully aware of their strategy, I felt my knees weaken. "You were recording everything as if it were an experiment." Nina argued that it wasn't like that, but her voice faltered. "All we had to do was monitor what worked. The initial efforts were insufficiently successful. Nevertheless, you continued to attend meetings." Detective Mendoza looked over the bottles and said, "So you increased the dosages?" Did you know these substances could be lethal in higher concentrations? There was silence in the room. With his head in his hands, James collapsed into a chair in the corridor, still visible through the glass. The Henderson account, I said slowly, parts clicking into place. That presentation wasn't the only thing that happened, was it? You needed me out of the way forever since the customer explicitly requested me as their lead. A mixture of dread and rage twisted Nina's face. You were ruining everything. I created that client portfolio for years, and then you turn up and suddenly everyone wants to work with you instead. James stated he could cure it by murdering me. The accusatory tone of the words lingered in the air. We weren't trying to, Nina started, but Dr. Phillips cut her off. The level of focus in the coffee you had today. The doctor added, staring straight at Nina, was much greater than prior samples we've evaluated from Miss S. Bennett's past hospital visits. Had she ingested it, the consequences would have been dire, maybe lethal. Detective Mendoza looked across to the other cop. Both their residences and workplaces will require a complete warrant. Additionally, get in touch with the drug manufacturer mentioned on these bottles. Learn how they acquired these drugs. With the fight gone from her features, Nina sagged back against her cushions. She mumbled that it shouldn't have gone this far. James insisted that we should give it another go. Despite my hands shaking, I moved closer to her bed and spoke steadily. Every time I felt sick, every meeting I missed, every customer I lost, both of you were observing and noting the effects of your poison on me. Does that make you a certain sort of person? The ensuing hush was deafening. As more officers arrived, I could hear James being read his rights outside. Unable to look me in the eye, Nina gazed at her hands. I turned away from my sister-in-law and replied, "Detective, I'm now prepared to make my official declaration." 3 weeks passed during the trial, but it seemed like years. Every day, I watched as the prosecution methodically presented their case against James and Nina in the courtroom. The evidence was overwhelming. The bottles from James's office, the thorough records they kept on every poisoning attempt, and the text messages and audio calls they used to coordinate their intentions. Their behavior during the proceedings was what most impressed me. Normally so poised and self-assured, Nina appeared diminutive in her defendant's chair. As expert witnesses described the potentially fatal effects of the narcotics they had been consuming, James was unable to even look at me. Instead, he kept his eyes focused on the floor. In particular, Dr. Phillips' evidence was scathing. She presented a comprehensive analysis showing how they had gradually increased the dosages over time, demonstrating clear intent to cause serious harm. The pharmaceutical business representative verified that James had stolen the substances through his college acquaintance, who worked in their research department. In her closing remarks, the prosecutor said that the accused had a deliberate pattern of action. There was more to this than corporate sabotage, an obvious escalation that could have led to Miss S. Bennett's death was part of a systematic attempt to harm her. I was relieved rather than happy when the verdict was eventually read. James and Nina were convicted on several charges, including conspiracy and attempted murder. The courtroom was hushed while the judge spoke. Given the deliberate nature of these acts and the length of time they were committed against a family member, the highest punishment is warranted. As I saw them being taken away in handcuffs, I reflected on how envy and greed had turned two individuals I had once trusted into something completely different from who they were before their freedom, their businesses, their reputations, all in an effort to ruin me. 1 year after the trial, I stood at the stage of the Nashville Business Leaders Conference, prepared to make the keynote speech. The irony wasn't lost on me. Nina had attempted to stop me from getting the Henderson account, which she and James had been so desperate to steal. This resulted in a number of other significant clients, making me one of the top marketing executives in the area. Success isn't simply about skill or hard effort. I began staring out at the sea of faces. It's about integrity, about building genuine relationships based on trust. I took a moment to process what I had said. Sometimes the biggest risks to our success come from people closest to us, but surviving those challenges makes us stronger. After my speech, numerous young professionals approached me, asking assistance. One woman, her eyes bright with determination, asked how I'd maintain my composure throughout the ordeal. I concentrated on my controllables. I informed her that I gathered information, followed my gut, and didn't allow fear deter me from achieving my objectives. The Henderson customer confirmed to me via email later that night that they were extending their contract for an additional 3 years. I grinned, thinking about how differently things could have turned out if I hadn't heeded my intuition that day at breakfast. That morning, a brief story about Nina and James starting their prison terms appeared in the local newspaper. I didn't read it. Knowing that getting even wasn't the greatest form of retaliation, I instead concentrated on the proposal for my most recent customer assignment. It was about overcoming those who attempted to stop you from excelling and moving on.